Good afternoon. This is Dr. Ollie Jones, and I am the co-president of the Ohio Grandparent Kinship Care Coalition. I want to welcome you all to our monthly Zoom meeting. Before I get started, we do have some new officers online, and so I would like for the officers to introduce themselves and tell what position you hold at this current time. Roxanne, go ahead.
Oh, hi, I'm Roxanne Bickle. I'm the current secretary.
Dr. Ware?
Yes, hi. Sorry for the dark background, but I am Dr. Sonia Ware and I am the co-president. Happy to be.
Is there anyone else on the line? Barb?
Well,
Barb?
yeah, I'm sort of transitioning,
Yes.
but I'm on the line.
Barb Turpin, I want to just give kudos to her as we get started. She has been very faithful. She is one of the founders of the coalition back in the early 90s, and she has served as the president for many years. And I just want her to know, I want you to know, we could not do what we do without the expertise of Barb Turpin. So we thank her for all of her support and her commitment to the coalition. Is there anyone else on the line that I don't see? I think that may be everybody. Again, I'm Dr. Jones. I'm the co-president. I want to thank you for attending. I want to also encourage the caregivers who are on the line. If you can invite other caregivers to the coalition, the information that we share is beneficial, as you know, and can be very impactful in how they parent the children that's in their care. I want to also ask you caregivers, if you would put your email in the chat, because at the end of this session, we will be pulling a gift card valued at $50. And so if you want to be a part of the process, please put your name in the chat. There would not be a July Zoom meeting. Our next meeting will be August the 16th, and that would be on the Ohio Coalition for Education of Children with Disabilities. That will be the topic on August the 16th. Also, we have some special projects going on with information for involvement with the Kinship Oral Health Story Bank Project. I'm gonna say that again, Kinship Oral Health Story Bank Project will be sent this week. For those who are involved, a $50 stipend will be provided to those who participate. Again, a $50 stipend will be provided to those who participate. So watch out for the email. The email will come from Barb Turpin. Also, we are encouraging you in September the 6th from 10 to 1, Kinship Advocacy Day at the Capitol in Columbus, Ohio. You are all invited to be a part of the process. We are encouraging you to share this with other kinship care providers. We want to have as many kinship care supporters and kinship care providers at the September Advocacy Day in Columbus. We will be having buses going from different places. Probably, we're looking at one coming from Cuyahoga County, Cleveland, and different other areas going down to Columbus. So mark your calendar for that day, because we want a large turnout, because it is important that your voice be heard of the needs and support that you need for kinship care and those children who you are taking care of in your home. Breakfast and lunch will be provided. There'll be several legislators and agency administrators and caregivers speaking. Caregivers can make your visit to the legislator's office. You can go into the office and you can talk to the various aides and legislators at that particular time. Children are welcome. Children are welcome. So that is not a barrier for you coming. But there is no child care. So you be responsible for the child or children that you bring. Registration, look for your email for registration. I know that's a lot, but we just want to give you the information so you can begin preparing now for those upcoming events. We have a fantastic topic, which is a favorite of mine, of trauma. And trauma is something that happens to many people in various areas and in various ways, in various situations. But our presentation is looking at how trauma affects relationship in terms of the brain core function, how those functions can be disrupted, the importance of the emotional safety of parent, child, and how they call it the triple P, positive parenting program helps create an environment where emotional safe relationships are built through simple practice and strategies. Trauma come in different forms and in different shapes and in different ways. You can be traumatized and just as from past experiences as well. So I'm not going to go into the types of trauma. That's for our speaker to do. She come very highly qualified and equipped to give us the information. Crystal is a Milner. She is an
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. She is an early childhood mental health consultant at Nationwide Children's Hospital, where she provides parenting support and education to Central Ohio parents. She has previously provided coaching and education on the impact of trauma to those working in the education system. Crystal is passionate about making our youth have the best start in life by supporting their parents, caregivers, and education and educators. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Crystal. And for those who have come on, if you did not put your name in the chat for the drawing, please do so at this time. Ms. Milner, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. And thank you guys for joining this presentation. I was very excited about being invited to the Ohio Grandparent Kinship Coalition. Parenting is a passion of mine. I am a mother of two sons, 22 and 17. And along my journey, there were so many things that I didn't find out until after I became a parent, about my childhood, about parenting, just about the whole experience. And that's why it led me to this career. So these are just some things that I've learned along the way that has helped me as a parent, but it also helps me help parents and caregivers along the way. So I hope you guys can take some things from this presentation that will be helpful for you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, put them in the chat, and I will try to answer to the best of my ability. But if I cannot, I will get back to you on those as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to give you guys something to look at. Here we go. All right. So how trauma affects relationships is the topic for today. And as Dr. Jones mentioned, my agenda and what we'll talk about is the brain's job. So its core functions, the basic core functions. How the core functions can be disrupted based on trauma, the importance of relationships and emotional safety, what Triple P is, so what my current job does, the positive parenting program, and how Triple P relates to relationships and emotional safety. So the brain's job. What are the brain's core functions? The core functions of the brain, the first one is to stay alive. So the brainstem, the most simplistic part of the brain, keeps us regulated enough to stay alive. It regulates our body temperature, our blood pressure, our heart rate, our breathing, swallowing, sleep, etc. The things that we put no thought to, that is what the brain does to just keep us moving and grooving throughout our journey. The brainstem also relays information to and from the brain to the rest of the body. So it plays an important role in the brain's core functions, such as consciousness, awareness, and movement. The next function of the brain is to procreate. So to evolve, reproduce, to acquire resources, to have us find a mate and then make the baby. If we can't evolve, we're no longer here. There's no existence. So that's a very important core function that our brain does. And then the next is to protect and nurture dependence. So our protective instinct is another thing that is a core function of our brain. There are neurobiological tricks to make sure we take care of our offspring. The neural systems mediating our stress response, procreation, reproduction, social affiliation, and communication are all interrelated. They share the same fundamental neurotransmitter networks and brain regions we get pleasure from. So I like to give all of this information because it'll help throughout the rest of the content that I'll go through, but sometimes we wonder about this job that our brain has. And there's so many different things that the brain does, but these are the basic functions. So a little more just about the brain. The brain develops from the bottom up, inside out. The brainstem is at the bottom, as we mentioned. It filters all information by two things. Is it safe and is it familiar? The environment mom is in while pregnant plays a huge role in the development of the child's neurosystem. This was one of those things where when I was pregnant, young, and only knowing that they said, oh, keep stress out of your life, but they don't necessarily tell you why, or at least back then, they didn't tell you why, but it is because the nervous system is being developed in the child. And it plays a role in our child's temperament. So those things that we kind of feel like we have no control over, whether they're quiet, they're social, they're laid back, they're short-tempered, all of these things are kind of determined by what's going on while our kids are being created and baked up in our bellies. Rhythm regulates, and it's developed in the womb as well. And that's from the mother's heartbeat. And the rhythm signifies the temperament. So if we're in a chaotic environment while we're pregnant and things are intense and upbeat, you get a faster heart rate. Just like with a child, they tend to be a little more energetic. And again, stress is good and bad. So we don't want to, or there's healthy and unhealthy stress. So some of those things are normal, upbeat things that are going on, and some of them are not. But it plays a part. If you're able to be in an environment where the stress is regulated, where it's calm, where the environment is helpful to the different stages that we go through in pregnancy, it can create a little more laid back and quiet environment for the child to grow and be in. So over on this screen, it gives you how the brain develops. All of them are there at birth. They're just not developed to their full capacity. And that's where the ages and stages come in, but we won't get into that today. I'm in full detail. Along the right side of the pyramid, it will tell you the things that are being developed as we work our way up from the brain. So the brainstem develops during pregnancy in utero. As mentioned, it is developing or taking care of the body temperature, the heart rate, the blood pressure, sleep. The next stage up is the diencephalon, also called the midbrain. That's where toddlerhood is happening. And the thing that it focuses on the most is movement. So appetite, arousal, motor regulation, that's where the movement comes in at. The limbic system, we also can call that the teenage brain that is being developed between 11 and 15 years old, so adolescence. And the main thing that's going on here is emotions. So emotional reactivity, sexual behavior, affiliation through attachment and reward is being created during these times or developed. And then our cortex is not fully developed until the mid and late 20s. And that's where our critical thinking comes in. Concrete cognition, reflective cognition is happening in our mid to late 20s. That's when it's fully developed. I like this part because it lets me know what's going on during dysregulation. It also reminds us that sometimes we expect so much from children because we're older and our critical thinking has taken place. There's not so much. So it kind of gives me a reminder of what to expect during these stages. But if we are in the later stages or later age range, but we're seeing some of the lower behaviors happening, whether it's from the brainstem or the midbrain or the limbic system, it kind of reminds me of what that person needs in that moment. And just for an example, we've seen teenagers or even adults become really emotional and upset. They may yell, scream, they may act out in a way that it looks like they're having a temper tantrum. That's letting you know that they're dysregulated and they're back down to their teenage brain. And sometimes we have to change how we deal with them based on where they're at in that moment. So this is something that I use on a regular basis too, that helps me not only within my own life, but working with families. All right, so what disrupts a caregiver's instinct to protect and nurture? It's one of its jobs, so it seems like there shouldn't be anything, but there is. Traumatic events disrupt a caregiver's instinct to protect and nurture. Traumatic events include ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, which is up on the board and we'll go over them in just a sec, but also other chronic stressors that are unpredictable, severe, and prolonged, such as things that happen day after day, living in a home with abuse or no stability, poverty, racism, community trauma, historical or generational trauma, such as slavery, the Holocaust, the violent colonization of Native Americans. All of these things are stuck in our DNA. So as generations are created, a piece of that follows along that journey. Serious injury and invasive medical procedures are also things that are considered traumatic events that can affect our brains and our bodies. Trauma can also take place inside the womb, and it is called intrauterine insults. So that's another reason why a stress-free environment is highly pushed during pregnancy. Maternal stress, toxic substances, alcohol, smoking, etc., malnutrition, infections, all of those things can create trauma in the womb. So before a baby even gets here, they can already have traumatic experiences before they even come into the world. So it's really important to think back to the environment the mother was in while pregnant when we're dealing with children as well and helping them along their journey. Traumatic events disrupt our sense of control, connection, and meaning. Trauma damages relationships and has an effect on psychological and emotional safety. Traumatic events can also prevent and disrupt development of the neural system that we get pleasure from. You know, those same neural system that gives us that feel-good feeling when taking care of and protecting our children. It gets confused along the way when traumatic events happen. Trauma changes the way the brain functions. When something traumatic happened, the brain shuts down all non-essential systems and moves into the lower brain system. So we're back down to that brain stem to keep us safe. That's kind of where fight, flight, and freeze, or absolutely where fight, flight, or freeze comes in at. That's where we're dysregulated and our body is trying to do whatever it can to keep us safe. When we think about the fight, flight, or freeze, it almost also puts us back where we were in that diagram of the brain. The freeze is the brainstem. It's only able to keep you alive in that type of dysregulation. And I'll show you that in just a second in a little more detail. The flight is kind of in that toddler brain. That's where that movement is being developed and created. And so when you have people run off, stomp away, slam doors, that's the toddler brain. And then the fight, that's where emotions come in, and that's the teenage brain. So it kind of gives you an idea of where people are when they're in fight, flight, or freeze as well. And we'll get to how we can work through those things or what could be helpful. Trauma can take priority away from our children and cause holes in communication and relationship building. So up on the screen, that's where some of the ACEs are. There's 3 types. Abuse, it's not only physical, but it can also be emotional and sexual. Neglect can be physical and also emotional. I think that's one of those things that we don't necessarily think of. We think of neglect as there's no roof over their head, there's no food to eat, there's physical abuse, but it can also be emotional. So not spending that time, not encouraging our kids, not motivating them, talking down to them, those type of things create adverse childhood experiences and can be traumatic. Household dysfunction is also on our list of ACEs. So if there is a family member with mental illness within the home, an incarcerated relative, so now they're not present, substance abuse, the mother treating violently. I dislike that they only have the mother because, as we know, domestic violence can happen to fathers as well. So parents or caregivers being treated violently is an ACE as well. And then divorce can also be a traumatic situation for a child. When these things are happening, on the right, you'll see some of the behaviors and the physical and mental health that is neglected or compromised during these situations. So there could be a lack of physical activity. Smoking can increase because of the stress levels and dealing with the situations as well as, alcoholism, drug use, and we can miss work. All of those behaviors can create a more traumatic situation for everyone within the household. Some of the physical and mental health situations that come up is severe obesity, diabetes, depression, suicide attempts, STDs from risky behaviors, heart disease, cancer, stroke, COPD, and even broken bones. So stress and trauma creates so much within our bodies that takes us from being our best and healthy selves. Not only does it affect us when it's happening, it affects us after it happens as well, if we're not able to seek the help that we need to get us through and process why these situations are happening, but also how we can get back to a healthy space. This continuum is the stress response arousal continuum. And this is letting us know where we are in our brain when stress is happening. So the impact from trauma is dysregulating to our nervous system, which affects our body and mind and keeps us in an alarm stress response, searching for relief. Without the proper tools to combat the effects of trauma or regulate our mind and body, we seek unhealthy coping mechanisms that give immediate rewards, such as food. Whenever you are feeling some type of way or you're dysregulated and you crave salty, fatty, sweet, spicy snacks, your brain is getting a reward from that. So sometimes that is people's addiction in mind. Whenever I'm feeling a way, my first instinct is to go for ice cream. So that's one of those things that sometimes we neglect and say, oh, that's not a problem, it's fine. But when we do anything in excess, it can cause concern and damage to our bodies. So that immediate reward that our brain gets, we may crave food, we may use drugs or alcohol. There may also be other risky behaviors and anything that gives us an adrenaline rush, that feel good, pleasurable feeling. If we don't have positive, healthy ways, our body will seek the unhealthy ways to get that response that it needs. Now I'm gonna go through where the brain is at, depending on the type of stress. I'm gonna start in the middle with alarm. Alarm is where people who have ACEs or traumatic experiences, this is where they're at 80% of the time. So what that means is a lot of us is running around in an alarm state and we don't even realize it based on things that have happened in our life. or is happening in our life. So our sense of time in an alarmed state is hours and minutes. We cannot associate actions with consequences. Where we're at in our brain is the limbic system, the teenage brain, and we could also be in the midbrain, so in that toddler brain. Our cognition during this time, we can be very emotional and irrational. The reward, again, is adrenaline rush, intensity. So what I mentioned as far as the salty, fatty, sweet, spicy foods, drugs, alcohol, those things is what our brain craves in this moment. I'm going to move back to the left and work our way to the higher states of stress. But when we are regulated, the sense of time that we're in is the extended future. We can sit and actually think about, months from now, years from now. We can think about the goals that we want and need for ourselves and our family. We're in our cortex during that time. So that's where our brain is at. The cognition is abstract. We can think in many abstract ways, just not one way. We're calm, we're relaxed, and the only time we are truly calm is in solitude. So solitude can be healthy, can also be unhealthy. That's where we can get all of the external stimulation away and get back to calm. But too much solitude turns into isolation. So we have to be careful there, and isolation can have some effects on our mental health as well. It's one of the reasons why solitary confinement in jail is a punishment. Too much of it can be traumatic and harmful. Our reward in a calm state is that we're aligned to activities with our values and beliefs. The next stage that our brain is in, and this is the goal to be 80% of the day, is in alert and engaged. That's where we're in our learning zone. In this state, our sense of time is days and hours. We are using our subcortex and our limbic system and our cognition. Our thinking is concrete. The reward is adding social relationships, so being relational. It's when you are with your family, having a good time, you're out with your friends, socializing. This is what our body craves and is a reward during this sense. We went over alarm. So after alarm, we get into fear. That's where the fight, flight, and freeze comes into play. Our sense of time is minutes and seconds. Where our brain is at, it's the midbrain or the brainstem. That midbrain is also the toddler brain. Our cognition during this time is reactive. So we are being reactive to situations instead of being proactive. The reward during this time is removal of distress. If you're dealing with someone who is in this state, you get parallel, you do not use a lot of words, and you kind of wait it out so that they can get regulated. From fear, there's terror or panic. In this, we lose our sense of time. You could quite honestly lose consciousness. If you've ever seen the videos of people who are on like the roller coasters that like throw you up in the air and you come back down and they kind of pass out during that moment, that's their brain trying to keep them alive. So they lose consciousness so that their body can regulate their blood pressure, their heart rate, and all of those things. So again, stress can be healthy and unhealthy. There's some good stress and some bad stress, but our body doesn't know the difference. It's about the perception of danger versus real danger. Sometimes we put ourselves in like the example of the roller coaster. But when we're in this state, we are in our brainstem and we are reflexive. Sometimes in this state, there's nothing that we can or will do. We may just shut down, and that's where the freeze comes into play, sometimes with trauma as well. In a state of terror or panic, it is best to control the environment, not the person. So if someone is in this state, it is not best to continue to talk to them or place our hands on them. or to try to move or adjust them. It's best to just make sure that they're safe. There's nothing in this space that will harm them or that they can get to harm themselves. The reward in this state is just for us to back up and be quiet. What you'll see from somebody in this state sometimes is rocking, or they're going to self-stim. So they're trying to find a way to regulate their bodies. And even rocking calms us. Sometimes I'll be in a meeting and I'll just rock because it's a long meeting and I really don't want to be there. My mind is on so many other things, but that's regulating my body. When we think in forms of babies, when a baby is crying, what's the first thing we do? We pick them up and rock them, and that's where rhythm comes in, just like that heartbeat and being close. So they talk about skin to skin. There's scientific reasons for these things because it helps calm our brain. In the bottom, you'll see the adaptive response when people are in these situations. In each mental state based on a child who has had adverse or traumatic experiences. So this gives you an idea, if you have grandchildren or children that you take care of, an idea of where they're at during this time. Different children have different responses, but on here, it's going to be shown with males being more hyper aroused and females dissociating more often. So in a calm state or in a rest state, when a child is in hyperarousal, they're calm and restful. If they're disassociative, same thing. They are in a rest state. If a person or a child is in the alert state, so this is supposed to be where we want to be 80% of the day, if there has been ACEs or traumatic experience, they are in a state of vigilance. So action or state of keeping careful watch for danger or difficulties. So even if they're supposed to be in this learning state and taking in new information, a child or a person who has had some type of ACE or traumatic experiences is still on alert. They can't even relax to a degree because they're still trying to figure out what is safe and what isn't safe. For a person who is disassociative, there's avoidance. So they try to escape or distract themselves from difficult feelings, thoughts, and situations. So then there's avoidance. In the alarm state, where people typically are with traumatic experiences or ACEs, so 80% of the time, there's resistance. They'll refuse to do things. They may push back on what the expectations are in the environment that they're at. A disassociative child, they show compliance. So even if something is happening to them that does not make them feel safe or comfortable, they may comply just to keep themselves safe, or they think they're keeping themselves safe because their body cannot handle what's happening. So there's compliance in that state. When a person with ACEs or traumatic experiences are in fear, in that mental state, there's defiance if they're hyper-aroused. So you're definitely going to get some defiance, some no's. They refuse the authority. They do some pushing back to anything that you're trying to do. And someone in a disassociative state will disassociate. They'll shut down. You think they're listening, but they're not. They're in another place in their minds. If we are in a mental state of terror or panic, there may be aggression. That's why backing up and being quiet is really important in this state. This is where you see people who may be yelling, screaming, fighting, hitting, and there is no way to calm them down. Damaging property, throwing things, just very aggressive. The disassociative person may faint, kind of like the roller coaster situation that I mentioned. So they're in a place where their body just shuts down. This is something that I absolutely use within my own family and with parents and caregivers that I work with. When I'm hearing situations or paying attention to behaviors as they're being explained to me, it's letting me know where they're at in their brain. And that is what can help us deal with a child who may have shut down, who may be talking back or refusing what we are asking of them. Knowing where they're at in their brain can help you handle the situation. It can also let us know where we are as well, because a dysregulated adult cannot regulate a dysregulated child. So it also gives us a place to know where we're at so that we can get back to a calm state to handle situations. When I learned this, it made me think of those times where, as a child myself or with my own children, they do something that we would not like them to do, or they're in trouble. And what did you do that for? Why did you do that? Tell me why. We're causing more dysregulation. And then we think they're being disrespectful because they're not answering, or they won't tell us, or we think they're lying. Their brains have shut down. So that's where some compassion comes in to realize we're not going to get anywhere if the child is in this state, or if we're in a state of frustration and anger. We all have to get back to a calm state so that anything can be accomplished during these type of situations. The importance of relationships and emotional safety. So attachment. Emotional safety refers to an emotional state achieved in attachment relationships. Attachment is a memory based on your first relationship. So it typically is a parent or a caregiver that determines how we relate to people later in life, how we related to the people that we're taking care of, or who is taking care of us. Relational and emotional safety is the first step to get a child to trust you and be able to regulate with you or in your presence. Sometimes our presence is going to cause more havoc on someone, one, if we're dysregulated, but also if we haven't built a healthy relationship with them. Emotional safety means parenting in a way where the child feels safe enough to be themselves, to be open, to be vulnerable, and it offers a space where their ideas, feelings can be expressed with confidence and also without fear. Not saying that there will never be a situation that we're hearing our child say, and we know that that is not what they should be doing. It is not how they should be thinking. And it could cause some frustration in us. It could also create some fear, because sometimes their choices, we know, are not the best and healthy for them in that moment. But if we react and respond in a dysregulated manner, showing the fear and aggression or chastising them, that will break up the relationship. They will no longer come to us in those moments. So that's what that means when it talks about emotional safety in a relationship, and them being able to show up in a way in confidence. In an emotional safe environment, there are still clear boundaries and expectations, because that helps create a level of predictability and consistency in emotions and behaviors. So when we talk about positive parenting, and I'll talk about our program soon, or another thing that's big right now is gentle parenting. That doesn't mean that we're not creating boundaries and expectations for our kids. We're just doing it in a space that they feel safe in. We still have to follow through. It also helps those moments. So emotional safety, those moments where we have to correct behaviors come up. So that's what I mean. We're not going to just let them do whatever they want to do. We create an environment where they still feel safe in those moments. I'm getting a sign that my internet is unstable. Can you guys still hear and see me?
Every once in a while, it cuts out but you come back in real quickly. But yeah, there is some cutting in and out a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barbara. If you miss anything or I stop, someone please let me know. A message in the chat. I'm hoping that everything continues on. The message went away, so I'm hoping I'm fine. So it also helps moments emotional safety where correction and challenging behaviors is needed if it is done with honesty and respect. Predictability, so where those routines come in at, routines also create safety as well. You feel physically safe, emotionally supported, and secure. So if you ever hear people talking about, routines, create a routine and, have a plan to your day, that predictability creates safety. Even if there's pushback, they may not know it, but it calms your brain to have a routine and to know what is expected. Our relational and social environment defines where we are in our state of arousal. So that stress response continuum I went over, relational and social environment is also an effect when that happens. If there's a healthy, positive relationship in a heightened state, a dysregulated person or child is more likely to trust you in that situation. So we can help them regulate and go back into the calm state or the alert state where they can take in the information. But if that isn't there, we could cause them to go from alert into fear, into terror. So the relationship that we have with our child, our grandchildren, nieces, nephews, or quite honestly, even a stranger plays a part. Sometimes situations, even in school, plays a part. If a teacher doesn't have a relationship with a child may act up more in school. If they don't feel safe within that relationship with the teacher, they feel like they're always pointed out in front of everyone, or a child may say picked on, their relationship with that teacher and their behavior in that environment may not be its best. So relationship plays a huge part in how people and children show up. Positive interactions and relationships quiet the stress response, and it activates the reward system in the brain. So it's creating safety. In connection to Triple P, this environment is touched on in our 5 principles of positive parenting. But when we think about attachment styles, that is the picture that you guys see on your screen. So there's 3 types of attachment styles. One is secure or positive. And in this style, needs are met all of the time with love. And when our needs are met all of the time with love, that equals trust. So we're building trust in that environment where it's secure and positive. In a chaotic environment, that's where needs are met some of the time by some people. That will create a child or a person who is suspicious and will test the relationship. So if you have a child who is testing limits and boundaries all the time, a routine may not be in place, but it could also be an unhealthy environment. The negative attachment style, that's where needs are not met or neglect and abuse is or has been present. So there's no trust. They may be withdrawn, and they may also possibly be aggressive in that state. So that's where the emotional safety and attachment comes into play. Sometimes the environment will determine where a child is, or even just an adult, and how we can get them back into regulation to a state where they're calm and can take in the information and instructions that we're giving them. The next thing we are going to go over is, what is Triple P? There we go. So what my job is now with the hospital as a early childhood mental health consultant, I work with the Triple P program. So the Positive Parenting Program is a system of evidence-based education and support for parents and caregivers of children and adolescents. Our program is a support system designed to prevent behavioral and emotional problems in children and teenagers. P aims to prevent problems in the family, school, and community before they arise, and it aims to equip parents with the skills and confidence they need to be self-sufficient and to be able to manage family issues without ongoing support. So our focus is from 0 to 8 years old, but we also have a teen program that is beneficial for parents and caregivers of children 11 through 16. Our basic program can help children through 12, but it depends on where the children are as far as their behaviors and the extent of the behaviors. P, we are tailored to support every family. So there's population health approach. We have different strategies that works in different situations. There's 30 plus years where we are supported by intensive research. It never stops. And then there's proven results that we improve parenting skills and confidence. P prevents behavioral, emotional, and developmental problems in children. We help reduce the incidence of child maltreatment in the community. We enhance the knowledge, skills, and confidence of parents by being that support system for them and walking them through different situations. And we build upon parents' strengths and abilities to be self-sufficient and self-reflective. So we're not a program that tells you what to do. We go through what you do, use our strategies to throw out some different ideas to help in situations where it may feel like behaviors are out of control, or to help tweak your parenting plan that you already have. We have groups that are in person. We have them that are virtual. We also work with families one-on-one. Our program that I handle within P at the hospital, I cover Franklin County. We also cover Fayette, Richland, and Crawford counties as well. We have community partners that work in other counties. So if we get someone who comes from a different county that we do not help, we will get you to someone that can help. But there also is P online, and the state last summer has started offering this to everyone within the state of Ohio. So even if there is not someone that is in your county that is doing P, whether virtual or one-to-one, there is the online program. It's a self-paced program with modules for parents and caregivers. There's 2 online programs, one for caregivers of children 0 to 12, and then caregivers 10 to 16, so the teen program. This is a very exciting and great resource for the families, as I mentioned, that may live without a local P provider. So, you know, with every presentation or movie or show, you got to throw in the commercial. That's the commercial. That is what we do. And if you are interested in P, I'll tell you a little more how P helps with that brain stress response continuum in just a second. We can get you information on our upcoming programming as well, or you can reach out to me. So how does P relate to emotional safety? If you're looking at the screen on the left-hand side, that is something that I went over earlier, the brain and how it develops up from the bottom up. And then on the right-hand side, it is our strategy pyramid, where we also work it from the bottom up. So on a very basic level, as we mentioned, the brain develops from the bottom up. At the bottom is the brainstem. The main job is to keep us alive. So there's no reasoning, no critical thinking. It just isn't developed yet. Again, those areas are there, just not developed. The brainstem is filtering the information again by, is it safe and is it familiar? The brainstem is where the brain goes when it is dysregulated. So that's where the fight, flight, and freeze resides. When dysregulation is present, relationships, consistency, and routine is important for regulation to happen. They create safety. So with Triple P, we work again from our strategies from the bottom up. The levels within Triple P are aligned with how the brain develops, what the brain can handle, and what skills need to be taught to develop those areas of the brain appropriately. If we can master the bottom two on both, we may have the privilege to connect to a dysregulated child, adolescent, or adult's brain, but we have to build the relationship first. So our first stage is developing positive relationships. We then work on encouraging positive behavior. And then once we get to that state, we are able to teach new skills and behaviors. Safety is what the brain needs to develop. So as we're working our way through, we're able to reach the brain and teach what needs to be taught. There are two strategies within our managing misbehavior that kind of feels out of place, but it also gives the brain what it needs. And within Triple P, we offer quiet time and timeout. Quiet time and timeout is used when the child can no longer take instruction. So the child is dysregulated to a point where no information or strategy is effective in managing the behavior, when the child is in fight, flight, or freeze. In other programs, and maybe how we've seen it years ago, quiet time and timeout was used as a punishment. With Triple P, it is not. It is to regain calm. So we have to go back to the brainstem and regulate. And if you remember the stress continuum, I mentioned that to be calm, the only way we're typically calm is in solitude. So the quiet time and timeout gets our child back into a state of a temporary solitude so that we can get to their parts of the brain to help them in whatever situation we're going through. Some situations only calls for removing our attention. We know from Triple P that what we give attention to increases, but others require the removal of all external stimulation, and that's where timeout is valuable. We achieve calm, as I mentioned, in solitude, so no external stimulation. And then after regulation and the child is calm, we can go back and work the strategies from the bottom up. So in those states where we call it an escalation trap, where us as parents and caregivers are probably at our last wit's end, and we are dysregulated, upset, frustrated, we may raise our voice. That timeout that we give our child, and with Triple P, it's 2 to 5 minutes, not based on the age of a child. But that timeout or moment away from the children that is in our care gives us a moment to regulate ourselves as well, to make the most of that situation. So why the positive approach to parenting? It's to fight off the power of negative input. The human mind pays more attention to negative comments than to positive ones. This bias is related to our brain's job to keep us alive. So it's looking for safety. With all of the mindfulness that's going on right now, and they're telling you if you have one negative thought, you need to offset it with 3 positive things. We have to change the way our brain is thinking. Its job is to keep us safe. So it's on the lookout for anything negative or that could possibly harm us. So we have to pay attention more to the positive than to the negative. And that's where encouraging positive behavior in our strategy list comes in as well. What we give attention to will increase. So if we're always telling them no, stop, don't, we're actually putting a spotlight on the negative behaviors. To offset that, it's to tell them what we expect or what we want to see versus what we don't want to see. The negative comments, again, are 3 to 5 times more powerful than the positive ones. So that's why we have to watch those negative comments. And I don't know if you guys, it made me just think where you may have said, and I'll raise my hand on this, I have been a person who have maybe said an inappropriate word, and then you wonder how that toddler picked that one up. Her brain focuses on those things, the things sometimes that we shouldn't. Another thing is low caregiver to child ratio results in more negative comments due to the need to be reactive and protective. So in that single parent home, sometimes that is, or caregiver home, that sometimes will increase our stress. And that's where some of the behaviors will come to as well, and we'll be a little more reactive in situations. Two things that I think are important to remember is if a child is dysregulated, whining, crying, yelling, screaming, they are not in a space to learn new lessons, comprehend instructions fully, or associate consequences with actions. This is why regulation is necessary before we move forward. Again, a dysregulated adult cannot regulate a dysregulated child. So we have to be regulated too. One of the things that I like as the takeaway is if a child is whining, crying, screaming, they're in fight, flight, or freeze, no talking is going to help them in that state. No punishment to a degree is going to help them in that state. We have to get them calm first before we can then go into consequences, so that they understand, why, and we're able to go back and teach the skill. Punishing a child without making sure the child is learning the skill to stop the behavior is doing nothing at all. And that's what we help do within Triple P. That is my presentation on here are some of the resources that helped me along the way to learn about trauma, and help and work with families and teachers when I was in that role as well. So some books that helped with Dr. Bruce Perry. That's where I learned and was trained in trauma. If you have any questions, now is the time, but I'll also kind of hang out in case there is questions along the way. I will stop my share just in case there's questions. And I'll also put my email in the chat box if you would like to know more about our program or have questions, and saying them out loud is uncomfortable for you.
Well, thank you so much for that presentations. To the caregivers, do you have any questions, or do you want to share maybe some experience that you had with trauma, maybe getting a child unexpectedly and the trauma that it had impact on you and the child? Any caregiver want to share?
Hello, Barbara. I can tell you from my experience, my grandson, we didn't know he had autism for years, so that did a lot of having to do with the trauma and working with psychologists to figure out why, because he didn't even talk. So Nationwide's really helped me with his development, and he's doing pretty good at 6th grade now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share? Have you experienced any trauma with the children that's in your care? Or have the child experienced any trauma? It goes both ways.
It absolutely does, Dr. Jones. And Laverne, thank you for sharing. You mentioning the autism also made me think not only children with autism, but a lot of kids are being diagnosed with ADHD. Mm-hmm. And something that we need to understand as well. Sometimes the symptoms of ADHD is from trauma, but when they're in these diagnoses and states, they are dysregulated most of the time. And so they're in fight, flight, or freeze a good portion of that time. Even when we think they're fine, they're in a dysregulated state.
Anyone else? I'm sure as a caregiver, you yourself have had trauma, and I'm sure you've experienced your child. So we want you to share, because you're sharing help others who are on the line as well.
I like to share.
Okay, thank you.
Milner.
This is Yaya. I'm raising he's 8 now. He's 9 years old. He came to me 4, and he was actually diagnosed with ADHD and disruptive dysregulation mood disorder. And that put me in trauma because I didn't know how to I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't understand it. You know, a lot of his behaviors was a lot of stop, no, don't do that. Oh my God. But once I realized what was wrong with him, I had to change my perspective on how I handle things. And I also took the Triple P 8-week course when it was given out, when he was in Head Start as well. So I'm trauma just like they are. But it helps.
Yes. Anyone else?
I said in the Triple P class help. I took the 8-week course when it was offered through Head Start, when he was in Head Start. And I'm also taking it again online. I have a year to do it. So I did mine online because we didn't have no in-persons, or I couldn't, the times didn't work well with me because I wanted to go to in-person because I like that in-person, be with other caregivers, but it didn't work out for me. So I'm doing it online as we do.
Wonderful, wonderful. Anyone else?
I think that this is a lot. This is great information, and it's a lot. And so one of the things we will do is we will post a recording of the presentation on our website, the OGKC website, as soon as it's ready, probably within the next couple of days. By next week, it should be on the website. That way you can go back and go over it in your own time, at your own speed, and pick up what some of the things that Crystal was able to give us, the pointers. And then hopefully, if you do have the time, like Lenora, and I know some of the other caregivers have also indicated they've gone through Triple P or they're going through Triple P, take the time to maybe do the online Triple P, because there is research that shows that it works. It's one of those things that you have to do gradually, and you just have to continue being vigilant with it and keep working on it. And Crystal, will you be able to provide your slides so we can post those on our website too?
Yes, I will email that to you.
Okay.
So that you can have it. And I do want to mention with Triple P Online, it is mostly self-paced, but you do get 3 coaching calls with a Triple P facilitator as well. So you're not left on your own just to learn the information. They will reach out and help you with specific situations as well.
Anyone else want to have any comments about some of their personal experience? I don't want to leave anybody out to share, because your sharing helps somebody else, help other caregivers. When you talk about your experiences, it helps other providers as well. I know I was traumatized when I got my 2 young grandkids, and my baby was 36 years old. And so after all my kids leaving my home, I got a 3 and 4 year old. And so not only did they come with a multitude of trauma and behavioral issues, I was traumatized too, because I had to totally readjust my lifestyle and living to accommodate 2 little small children who literally destroyed my house. Okay, and because of the anger so there's all types of trauma, the anger that they came with, and so my trauma was making the adjustment. When I see them, they was always cute and nice and happy, but then it's different when they come and live with you. Okay. So it's always good if you're going through something to share with others, because they may have a solution and can be support to you. It is important for you to know as caregiver that you're not out there by yourselves. Barb has been a caregiver. Ron Brada has been a caregiver. You have other officers on the line, Roxanne. So you have people who sign your where they are all at some point or are kinship care providers. So we come to you with a lived experience, and that's important. If you did not put your name in the chat for the drawing, I'm going to give you a minute to do so. Put your name in the chat, and Barbara's going to pull a name out, and you will get a $50 gift card. We try and do this every time we have a meeting. We want to do that. So while you're doing that, I want to remind you again that there is no July meeting, and that on August the 16th, there will be a presentation from the Ohio Coalition for Education of Children with Disabilities. And so we encourage you If you know other kinship care providers or someone who are caring for someone else's child, share this information with them so that they can also sign up and get the information and be a part of this process as well. Also, mark your calendars. Put it on your calendars. September the 6th, we are taking buses down to Columbus. That is our advocacy day. Your voice is important. So you have an opportunity to go down and let your state reps know what you need them to do to ensure that you can better parent your child, or your grandchild, niece, and nephew, by making sure you have the resources that you need. So your voices are important. The more voices we have, the greater impact we can have. That's again September the 6th. And you can bring your children, but there is no child care. So you would have to be the child care provider as well. Buses will be, you'll hear more about the location that the buses will stop to pick you up. Lunch will be provided. We just need you to come because there's more power in the masses. Is there anything else before I turn it over to Barb? And she is going to pull the name. Any other comments from our caregivers? I want to encourage you when you come on to ask questions. Don't be shy, ask questions. At this time, I am going to turn it over to Barb.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jones, and thank you, Crystal, and all of our participants. You guys make the presentation live. You make it worthwhile, and like Dr. Jones says, we welcome anybody's questions or comments. That's the thing that gives people a real hope and support among each other. So thank you for your participation. And today, our $50 gift card recipient is Marla Overholt. And thank you, Marla, for attending. You also provided some information about your children's, what they went through, traumatic experiences. So we know you're dealing with some of the same things that Crystal has explained and described to us. So thank you for what you're doing for your, as a caregiver. And I will get with you a little later to get information about getting the gift card to you. And thank all of the other caregivers as well as some of the agencies that have been online. You're very supportive. Thank you for what you're doing for caregivers, because without you, a lot of them would just be out there, in trauma and with no direction. So thank you very much for all the help that you give us, and have a good July. We're letting people take vacations or do whatever they want to do over the July month, and then we'll be back in business in August. So thank everybody and have a great rest of the next couple of months in summer.
Take care. Have a great one.